Now, let's kind of grind a little gears here and change the topic just a little bit, because we're using the term faith-based recovery. And
Yes.
I would kind of like to define that for some people. In your mind, what is faith-based recovery?
So faith-based recovery, when I talk about it, just means it's recovery based on belief in Jesus Christ. So most of the faith-based recovery places that they run, that is what they run off of, is the Bible and a belief in Jesus, and that Jesus will set you free from your addiction. It's also what my recovery is based on. That's what works for me. I read the Bible, I talk to God, and I have been clean for 6.5 years doing that. It doesn't work for everybody. Not everybody believes in God. Not everybody in the beginning is able to even find any faith.
Right.
When they first get clean.
Right.
But if it sounds like something you're interested in, it starts with opening your Bible and having a conversation with God.
Right.
But that is what those recovery centers base their recovery on.
Absolutely. And to be quite frank, it's a lifelong journey. You don't really just say, I'm recovered.
Right.
It's lifelong.
Yep.
It's just like anybody else who ever has a problem in life, especially when you're a faithful Christian.
Yeah.
And you've got, maybe it's financial problems, or you've got marital problems, or you've got, rebellious children or whatever. You pray about it.
Yep.
And you look for answers, and you go to the Bible, and you go to your pastor, and you find these support networks, and you work them to your advantage. And I think personally is that if a clinician works with a person who is an addict and they don't take faith into account in some way, then we're not doing justice to the whole person.
Absolutely.
If that person walks in and says, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in anything, fine. That's the road we can take.
That's how you approach it.
Yeah, that's fine and dandy. We're good with that. I am not going to turn anybody away. If they come in and say that they're Jewish, if they come in and say I practice Hindu, if they come in and say I'm a Muslim, if they come in and say I'm a Buddhist, I'm going to say fine. And let's work with whatever faith that you have and you're practicing in that area, and get you from where you are to where you need to be. So this is a very respectful thing. I don't want to ever feel like, or I don't want someone to feel like we're shoving a religion down their throat and saying the only way you can recover is to do it this way. Which
is not true. I know many agnostics and atheists in recovery who have been in recovery for multiple years.
Yeah.
Some of them 20 years in recovery without any belief in anything.
There you go.
So you can recover without a faith-based program. It's just what works for you.
Yeah. And so what has worked for you is the faith-based approach.
Yes, that's what has worked for me.
So let's go back then to, let's call it your first genuine attempt at sobriety.
All right.
Where you really were saying, I'm gonna do this.
Okay, so I've only done it twice, basically. So the first time, it was genuine. I wanted to get clean, but that came from a place of suffering. I was very sick from withdrawals, and at the time I was married, my husband and I were both addicted to drugs. We were both very sick. We couldn't find more drugs, so we decided we needed to get clean, so we needed to check into the hospital. So at the time, Marietta Memorial Hospital actually had a detox unit. I don't think they do now.
Oh, wow.
But at the time, we went to Marietta Memorial in Marietta, Ohio, and I went to the detox unit, and I got clean. And at that time, I worked a 12-step program, so I did the 90 meetings in 90 days, and I was clean for 7 months. But there was absolutely no God in my recovery. It wasn't about God at all. I don't really know what my higher power was at the time. And a lot of people like to tell me I was floating on the pretty pink cloud. I was in that beginning stages of recovery where everything was perfect and great and wonderful, and I never made it out of that. But I was married, like I said, and my husband didn't really want to be clean.
Right.
So he was a major influence in my life, and it just didn't work because he wasn't clean and I was, and it wasn't working for me.
Right.
So that was the first time I really tried to get clean. Maybe had we both stayed clean, it would have worked, but
Right.
Addicts in recovery can't really hang out with addicts who aren't in recovery.
Right.
It doesn't work very well for us.
Yeah. And that's a very, very hard lesson to learn.
Yeah. You lose a lot of people that you consider friends when you get clean.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And often when I have a client that comes in for the very first time and it's a addiction scenario, whether or not they are willing to cut ties is a really good indicator of where they are.
Absolutely. What are you willing to do for your recovery? Because if it's anything less than what you were willing to do to get high, if you can't put the same effort into getting clean and staying clean that you did to find drugs and get high,
absolutely,
then you're not ready to be clean.
Right.
Yeah.
And motivating factors. Call me a cynic, but I have had people who have come in and you would think that getting clean for their kids, or getting clean for a job, or getting clean for their mom who's sick with cancer and has a limited amount of time to live, those kind of scenarios that are pretty pressing, doesn't do it.
They don't work. No. Getting clean for anybody other than yourself usually doesn't work. Now, I can't say it never works because I do know a couple of people in recovery who have been recovered for a long time who got clean for somebody else. I know a guy that's pretty popular on Facebook. He's a great guy. Got clean for his kid and is still clean.
There you go.
But that's, he didn't do it for himself.
Right.
But for me, it wasn't going to work. I have 2 children. I didn't start using drugs until after I had children. So obviously they weren't going to be my deciding factor, my motivation to get, because they weren't, I wasn't motivated to not start getting high to begin with, and I had kids.
Right.
So for me, it had to be something I wanted to do for myself. I had to want to be a better me. And I mean, my kids play a huge role in that, but it had to be because I finally loved me enough to do it.
Wow. That's impressive.